Well, I took a drive down the Cimarron Trail to a little bit south of Tulsa to a place called Mounds, Oklahoma to talk with longtime ultralight enthusiast Steve Mock.
Good morning. Welcome to Mounds, Oklahoma. My name's Steve Mock. Live here in the Mounds area. Been keeping an airplane here at what we call Hopper Hill. We're located just 3 miles south of Mounds, which in itself is about 20 miles south of Tulsa. Got my private ticket back in '77, learning to fly in Cessna Spam cans. But that didn't really do it for me because, well, I like to say that anybody who can drive a car can drive a Cessna, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're driving. And that's what led me to ultralights, because I wanted something more. I wanted to be into the pure fun flying aspect rather than just driving around under air traffic control, et cetera, et cetera. So I looked at at that time, the very beginnings of the ultralight movement. There were more hang gliders at that point, and I didn't relish the idea of picking barbed wire and fence posts out of my teeth, so I just really wasn't committed to that. And then I heard about the ultralights that were coming on. This was '82 is when I bought my first weed hopper. Oh, that would have been a good 6 months before the promulgation of FAR Part 103. So I'm one of the old geezers. I've been around forever, as attested to by the loud Birdman pen here and the lack of hearing. Lesson number one is to stay away from chody engines. If any of you out there are flying chody engines, scrap them now. Use them as boat anchors. That's all they're good for. But get out of the sky with chody engines. If they haven't tried to kill you, they will. Well, you know, anything mechanical can break. I mean, even now that we have the Rotax engines, which are virtually bulletproof, you know, they can let you down as well. So you've just always got to fly as if they might. We kind of preach the old axiom around here that, you know, sooner or later, it's when, not if. You will go down sooner or later. I don't care how well you maintain your engine, how carefully you mix your fuel, sooner or later you will be called upon to make an emergency landing. So you've always got to be prepared for that. If flying over a heavily forested area, you either fly high enough that you can glide out away from it, or you go around it. It's just that simple. Another thing I found invaluable when training new students to fly is what we call the 30 and 3 rule. And I don't think you'll find it published anywhere, but this is just a rule of thumb that we always use. And basically it's to ingrain into a new student to always maintain at least 30 miles an hour of airspeed unless you're 3 foot or less from the surface of the ground. And it's just one of those things that just kind of sticks in the student's mind that can certainly help him keep out of trouble. I've never known it to fail when a student has followed that rule. I might just spend a few minutes and visit with you about propellers that I have found that work and don't work on ultralights over the years. Currently I'm swinging an Ivo 68-incher on this Rotax 503 on my weed hopper. I like the simplicity of the prop in that if you want to change pitch on it, all you do is disassemble the prop and you can move some of the washers from in front of the hub to behind the hub. And that resets a couple of cams inside the hub, which steel rod with a 90-degree bend down here in the prop, and effectively moving the thickness of the washer from in front of the hub to behind the hub changes those cams, which does change the angle of the blades. Over the years I've had various the wood designs. Tennessee prop seems to work very well. When you get into the composites, I've also had Ultra Prop, the 3-blade. I would warn anybody away from the Ultra Props. They're nice, smooth, very tough props, but they're extremely inefficient. There's no twist to the blades. They're just kind of like a club out there. As I mentioned, they're very tough. I've had an airplane blow over in high winds with the 3-blade Ultra Prop on. And of course, guess what that does to the blades? It bends them back at about a 90-degree angle. Then I flopped my weed hopper onto its back on top of a barbed wire fence. We just grabbed it by the tail and flopped it right back over the way it had come over, so that bent the prop back again. I flew that prop home that night from 30 miles away and flew it for about a year or two after. So the Ultra Prop is a tough one, but it's very inefficient. I can't recall the different tests that we put it through. We did have a large spring type, well, almost like a gigantic fish scale, which will weigh up to like 300 pounds of pull. And as I recall, that the Ultra Prop was cranking out like maybe 120 pounds of thrust, and we put a stock wood prop on and it jumped it to like 160, as I recall. It's been quite a few years ago since we did that test, but it proved to me that I needed to get rid of that Ultra Prop, and I did. Now, with respect to the number of blades to turn, I found that the 3-blade is definitely smoother. Just the number of, if you want to call them power pulses per engine or per revolution of the prop, it does smooth it out. There's less vibration transmitted to the airframe, so the 3-blade props are very noticeably smoother. I do recommend very highly the Prince wood props if you can stand the expense of them. It's nearly a $500 prop as compared to the Ivo's $250. It's the only reason I don't have a Prince on this now, Prince P-tip. That seems to be about the most killer prop going, at least with respect to the ones I've flown. They won't static thrust as well as a stock 2-blade prop will, and that's surprising. If you tie the tail of your plane to the hangar, through this giant fish scale, a Prince P-tip prop will not pull as strong as a stock 2-blade wood prop will. But once it gets a moving air through the prop disc, that prop just seems to grab a hold. It'll just almost bite you in the butt. You'll feel the seat just slam you in the back, and that's when it really comes on. But I think the strongest wood prop available is that Prince P-tip. I've learned to stay away from avgas. Had it proved to me again just as recently as last summer. I've used avgas in the Rotax 277s and never had any problem with it. But now we've had a couple of shoot downs with the larger engines, the 503s, running avgas, and I saw it myself in my own engine last summer. Just a couple of tankfuls, and I had just kind of an evil-looking yellowish crud all across the tops of the pistons. And I don't think we want that, in our birds. One of the guys in the club credits that with putting a hole in the top of one of his pistons and knocking down his Coyote with a 582. He credits the avgas with that. But there are additives in the aviation fuels that definitely are deposited on the piston domes in the 2-cycle engines. So rule number 1 is stay away from avgas in 2-cycle engines. I burn a just regular Texaco or Conoco, whatever, unleaded, super unleaded. And my choice of oils in this 503 is the Texaco Haviland brand. So I burn nothing but the Texaco Haviland brand for 100 hours. And I tore this bird down with my son's help just 2 weeks ago, and there was just a trace of carbon in the front cylinder and a little bit more in the rear, which probably runs a little cooler. But the engine was remarkably clean inside. Gosh, the hatch marks on the cylinder walls were undisturbed, and I was very pleased with how clean it was. The spark plugs had some crud on them, a little bit of junk on the jugs, the cylinder heads themselves, but remarkably clean for 100 hours of operation. I might also add, don't go around mixing oils. I learned this many, many years ago, especially if you're going to mix a mineral-based oil with a synthetic. That's almost a guaranteed shoot down because the oils just are not compatible. It's almost like blood clotting. You'll find clots or clumps of oil floating around inside your fuel tank, and that will plug a filter and it will knock you down very quickly. So if you ever go to change oils, completely drain your fuel system, your lines, your carburetor float bowl filters, and everything, and make it a total complete change from one brand to another. I do want to caution, all ultralight owners to be careful about the modifications you make to an airplane. We've experimented over the years with adjustable wing struts and recurving the battens or the ribs in the wings with various trailing edge modifications, just trying to make the airplanes fly better, more efficient, faster, whatever. But I would avoid any serious airframe modifications unless you are an aeronautical engineer, because you don't know what you may be messing up by, say, changing the curvature of a wing. And we did find in changing the curvature of our wing ribs that it did develop a low pressure over the horizontal stabilizer of a weed hopper, and it did develop a pitching characteristic to the horizontal stabilizer at a particular airspeed. It would cause the tail to load or unload depending upon the airspeed of the plane. So basically what I'm saying is you don't know what you may be changing in one area by altering something in another. And unless you're aeronautically trained from the design or mechanics end of things, so I would rather avoid making any material changes to an airframe. If you mess with any aspect of that, well, you're going outside the parameters of that design, and like I say, guess what? You have just become your own test pilot, and I don't know if you get paid enough to do that or not.
Well, that's Steve Mock from the Green Country Ultralight Flyers organization just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Steve's a great guy and an excellent pilot. He can really put that weed hopper of his through the paces.